My name is Kwiatkowski. I'm the corporate chef for culinary services here at Michigan State University. And what we're going to be doing today is taking some restaurant concepts and turning them into what you can do at home every single day. That idea of cooking once and eating 2 or 3 times will help you so much more when you're just with your day-to-day busy lives. You know, all of us are always way too busy, and we get sucked into this convenience store or convenience packaged item. What I hope to be able to do is get you excited about cooking and want you to say, you know what, I can do this at home and I can have some fun with this at home, and just some simple little things. And some tools to maybe help. You know, when we're in the restaurant industry, we are always planning our menus, whether it's a special, whether it's what our menu is going to be for the week. So taking your meals and having fun with, all right, what do I want to have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then my grocery list. And the idea of trying to use same ingredients more than once. You know, brown rice takes 45 minutes to cook. And so if you're going to have brown rice on Tuesday and on Friday, it's going to be a real pain, because when you get home, it might be 5, 6, 7 o'clock, and you don't want to take the time to cook it. So then you do something else, or you choose a different way to do it. And so hopefully what's going to happen is it's like, okay, you know what, I've got a little bit of free time. I can do up instead of 1 cup for one day and 1 cup for another day, I can do up, let's say, 4 cups of rice, because it's not going to go bad in one day. It's going to go bad after maybe 5 to 7 days. But it's not going to go bad after 1 or 2 days. So if you cook up 4 cups of rice instead of 1, and something to remember, only use, most packaging is different. Some people say it's 3 to 1, some people say it's 2.5 to 1. Usually the rule of thumb is 2 to 1. I like going with about 1 cup of rice to about 1.5 cups to 1.75 cups of liquid, no more. You can always add a little bit more liquid at the end if needed. The other piece to this though too is we're going to be making up a bunch, and what we want to do is only cook it about 3/4 of the way. We don't want to cook it all the way done. What you're going to want to do, and even if you're going to make it for that meal, you're going to cook it up 3/4 of the way, take out what you don't need for that meal, put it on something really flat. You know, you might not be able to fit a sheet tray into your refrigerator. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But the surface area here is going to help that rice to cool really quick. Now, from that same token, you know, I can probably put all of that rice in this container. But what's going to happen is the rice on top might get cooled off, but everything down below will not get cooled off. It'll basically cook and continue to cook, and then you'll have one big rice ball that's left. And you're not going to want that, and I don't want that, because then you're going to blame me for it, because you're going to say, well, Chef Kurt said that if I cook my rice up ahead of time, it's going to make my job easier. Yes, it will, but you just make sure we cool it out. And since we're cooking it about 3/4 of the way, the nice thing is as we're cooking the next meal, or as we're heating it up, we're going to finish that cooking process with it. And that kind of holds true with pasta as well. Rule of thumb for pasta: when we're cooking pasta, to cook it all the way, 8 minutes in boiling water, no more. What my rule of thumb is I'll cook it about 6 minutes, unless I'm having it that night for dinner. Cook it about 6 minutes, 7 minutes tops. And here's another thing: if it's in water, salt the water. Do not put oil in the water. The oil does nothing. The oil just sits on the top. Salt the water, and the reason for salting the water is to make sure that the water recovers quickly. When you put that pasta in, what happens is the water quits boiling. You want that water to come back to a boil as quick as possible. With the salt in that water, that's going to happen. Because if not, you're going to be cooking your fettuccine or your linguine, and it's going to be sitting there and probably too long. And if you don't stir it or think about it, that's when you get that one big noodle that comes out in the end, and they're all stuck together, and they're mush on the outside and raw in the center. And we don't want that either. So salt in the water, add your pasta, 6 minutes, pull it out, shock it, run it under cold water, then add a little bit of oil to it. into your refrigerator. You're good to go. And pull it out as you need it. And the bonus part is yeah, you know what? We shorten the cooking time by a minute or two. But as we're heating that back up, we are going to finish the cooking process of that pasta in the dish, because it's going to probably cook for probably a good 4 or 5 minutes, give or take, in that dish that you're making. And if it's a pasta bake, it's even longer. So having it a little undercooked is okay. So pasta and rice, a little bit undercooked, cook way more, you know, what you need for the entire week. Cook it on a Saturday or a Sunday when you have a little bit of extra time, or maybe you've got Mondays off, and that's the day that you can kind of cook or kind of kick back and take that day off. What's also really important is thinking about different ways to utilize it. Don't always just have rice as a side dish. That'll get boring real quick. And having rice as a side dish gets very boring, and then they're not going to want it. We can season things up a lot of different ways. We can have fun with it. You can take your plain rice that's cooked, and we can make a stir fry with it. We can make up a light vinaigrette, toss that vinaigrette with maybe some fresh vegetables, and serve that as a side. We can serve it just lightly warmed. You can also put it in your soup and have some fun with it. It doesn't have to be egg noodles in your soup. It can be rice. So think that way, thinking different ways to look at different dishes. And it's great. You know, the internet's a great tool. Use it. Be very careful and mindful of the recipes you're pulling. I would not recommend looking up a recipe for a special dinner that you're doing with friends and trying it for the first time on them. May not work so good, so just be mindful. But the internet's out there, and it's a great tool to use for different ideas, especially if you're pulling certain ingredients to home. It makes things really nice. Another thing that's always nice, one thing I like to do at home, is keep your fruits and vegetables out on the counter. When we go to the grocery store, we don't find them in the cooler. We find them at room temperature. Now, yes, they would last longer if they were in your refrigerator. And I like keeping my carrots and my celery in the refrigerator. But like my onions, my sweet potatoes, my avocados, things like that, some of my fresh fruit, I leave it out on the counter because I want to see it. And when I see it, I'm going to want to eat it. As opposed to digging through my refrigerator and go, ooh, what was this? And it's been in there for probably a week too long, and now you got to throw it away. Not what we want. So now we've got the idea of that starch and some veggies talking about. What we want to talk about now is stock. Stock is so vital, especially like in the restaurant world. It's important for us to always use every little bit scrap that we can to get good money for it. And so when we're at home, as we're peeling carrots, and you're probably peeling those carrots into the trash can, save those shavings. Put them right into your little Meyer bag, or put them into your bag and leave that bag open and shape right into here. The ends of the celery that you're not going to use, right into here. The insides of the peppers, into here. The ends of the zucchinis, into here. The mushroom stems, into here. Whatever you don't use, put them into a bag and put them in your freezer. They're not going to go bad. They're going to get frozen. You get a nice bag full of them, you can pull them out and you can make vegetable stock with them. And so you got a nice big bag of them and probably about 1 gallon of water, and put it on your stove and let that go for about 3 hours. You let that go, and you might have to skim a little bit, but you don't have to sit there and watch it. You could be leaving for 3 hours to go work out or go to a soccer game or go wherever you needed to go, shopping for something else. Come back and you're good to go. And what you're going to want to do is take your colander and put something underneath it, because the last thing you want to do is strain it right into the drain. You'll make that mistake once, probably not again. But go ahead and strain it, and that liquid that we have left is all that vegetable stock, and it's going to have a really nice color to it, and it's going to have some great aroma to it. And as we're boiling it, one other thing, throw maybe a clove or two of garlic and a bay leaf or two in there, and that'll just help bring out the flavors of those vegetables. If you have some extra herbs that are laying around that you want to put in there, some fresh herbs, you can cut them. If they're in your refrigerator, put some in, and just let them simmer away with there too. Adding flavor, some simple flavors, and strain it out. Now, oh no, chef, I've got 1.5 gallons of liquid that I strained out, but yet I'm only going to use, let's say, 2 quarts of it. What am I going to do with all of everything that's left over? Well, you get out your ice cube trays. Now, some people might not actually have ice cube trays. You got the fancy freezers that have the automatic ice makers. I'm sure you can go to the hardware store somewhere and buy some. Put the liquid in the ice cube trays, let it freeze, pop them out, put them in a nice Ziploc bag. And you can store that. It's not going to go bad. And you can pop them out as you need it for when you're making rice, when you're cooking something, when you're sauteing something, you're making a pasta dish, a nice ice cube, you just put it right into the saute pan and it melts out just fine. It's a nice utilization. So instead of spending $2 or $3 for maybe a cup or two or a quart or so of vegetable stock, you can take the stuff that you made out of all the scraps that you were probably going to throw away. So it's just a nice way to go about it. Now, to make chicken stock, I can't say enough good things about whole chickens. Whole chickens are so underutilized, it's not even funny. Sometimes we have a tendency to get a little bit cheap. Maybe not cheap's not the right word. Sometimes what'll happen is we'll actually just, I don't have time for it, so I'll just get whatever I can. A whole chicken's gonna maybe cost you $8. For a really super special one, like this one from Myers was $5. A whole fryer chicken's gonna be $5. If you want the non-GMO, organic, specially massaged, ultra special feed, it might cost you $8. But for an entire chicken, that we can make a lot of different meals out of one chicken. Super important. Now we're gonna be getting into the kitchen talking about cutting. I wanna take a quick minute and talk about the tools that we're gonna be using. When we're using our cutting board, always have something underneath the cutting board. Now this is probably the same stuff that you have lining your cupboards for your glasses. That works out great. It can be just a wet piece of paper towel. What we want to make sure is that this is not moving around. We already got to chase sometimes the food around on this. We do not want to have to do that chasing the cutting board around on your countertop. It can be very dangerous. Next is our good old trusty chef knife. People always ask me, chef, what's a really good chef? What's a good set of knives? What's a really good set of knives? What I would say is invest in a really good chef knife. $50 to $100 will get you a good quality knife that's going to hold its edge very well. I would also highly recommend you get a paring knife and then make sure you have a steel. This steel does not sharpen these. It simply hones the blade. It helps it stand back up on its edge, but it does not sharpen it. What you're going to want to do is make a couple of swipes every time before you're going to use it. And it's no more than a 25-degree angle, just a couple of times. And then always, 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 just make sure that there's nothing left on your knife. That'll help keep it sharp longer. This knife, a lot more expensive, but any knife, when we're in the kitchen, these 2 fingers first, onto the knife like so, and your hand gets wrapped around it. We now have good control of this knife. It's gonna go where we tell it to go, whichever way we want it to go. If you're like this, it can go a lot of other ways that we don't want it to go. Also, this finger is very long. It can get lazy, and I've seen people do this. You don't want to have to go for stitches. So just be smart about it. These 2 fingers, and wrap them around. You now have good control of your knife. When you're cutting things, this knife does not leave the cutting board. You do not want to be doing this. Can you? Sure you can. You're taking a risk of chopping something off every time you pull this knife off the cutting board. You better be real sure you know how and where that knife is going. With here, very controlled. It's almost got a pivot point. It's only going to go up as high as I tell it to go, and I have much more control over the knife. Now this hand comes into play. We now have this hand this way, this hand goes like this. Think of the claw. We do this so we don't end up like this. This is always with our veggies, whatever we're cutting, so that this knife is right up against my finger, nothing's gonna happen. I hope that helps a little bit about knives. Like I said, a chef knife, a good paring knife, bread knife works good too, or having one of those. All the other knives, they're nice to have. A boning knife, very, very useful, but unless you're boning out a lot of fish, you're not gonna use it, or you're not gonna use it the way it's supposed to be used. Know how to use these knives and you're not gonna need any other knives. So we're gonna take our chicken. And actually, before we do that, do this. We're all cleaned out. When we're working with the whole chicken, I like rinsing them off real quick before I start cooking with them or anything, and then patting them dry. Since I'm kind of just showing you how to cut the guy up, we're just gonna go through it. And if anybody hasn't done this, we know that we got the wings here, we got the legs here, and it's always fun. I like taking the wings off first and then working from there. But what works good is to lightly open up. And all I've done is just kind of cut the skin so I'm exposing things. And with this guy, I want to cut the skin. And what I'm looking for is where the knuckle is. It's almost where the joint is. And the same thing is going to go for this side. There he is. So, we got our little chicken wings out. And the same goes for this joint right here, because this joint's gonna pop open. You know, and this little knife doesn't have to work very hard. And now I've got a chicken wing. And the same goes through here. Chicken wing, we'll nibble it. Chicken wing. Chicken wing. So now we got our 4 chicken wings. Now, does this really constitute one meal? Nah, but it's a nice little appetizer. And if you really aren't a big chicken wing fan, or nobody in your house is a chicken wing fan, I'd say this can go in for stock. These little tips right into your stock pot as well. And so like we talked about making vegetable stock, when we're making chicken stock, the only thing we're doing differently is we're adding chicken to it. Everything else is the exact same. So when we've got chicken, there's a breastbone right here, and we're just gonna pick one side or the other to go down. And there's our chicken. Now, what we also have attached to this is the chicken tender. And I personally usually just take the skin right off of these guys. And there's our nice chicken breast. And we do the same thing here. And voila, we have our other chicken. Now we take the tenderloin off, and it can pretty much pull off. And again, skin comes off. Now, this piece of chicken, probably, I'm gonna say close to 10 ounces of breast. This is enough for 2 people for a meal. I think inevitably sometimes we try and eat way too much, but this could easily be 1 meal right here. We'll talk about cooking him in just a second. But now that we've got everything kind of broken down, we make it a lot easier to pull the thigh off. Drumstick, and our thigh. Same goes for the other side. Just pop that out. And, you know, and the other thing is too that you can actually cook this as 1 piece if you really wanted to. Now we've got this. There are little bits and pieces of chicken left on this, but there is a lot of flavor also left on this. This is the best piece that goes in for making soup. This by far, way yummy. So you put this with the other bits and pieces into that pot while we're cooking it away for 3 hours, and you will have some of the best tasting stock that you're gonna want. It's gonna be just like Mom used to make. Now I wanna take a minute to talk about cooking this chicken. You know, the chicken breast cooks rather quickly. It's rather lean, doesn't have a lot of fat to it, so overcooking it can be really bad. And we want uniformity in cooking. Problem is, this is a lobe. This is much thinner than this. So that means this is gonna cook way faster than this. So the nice thing is maybe after a really kind of hard day or a rough day, you just put a piece of plastic over it and you can just work out some of your aggressions, and life is made easier. You can also, if you bunch it up, lightly butterfly it open so that now the chicken is the same thickness all the way through. Salt and pepper on both sides, and you saute this guy up for maybe 3-4 minutes on each side, you're good to go. You can cut it into strips, fajitas, you can put it on your char grill, whatever you want. And so we've got a couple of different meals all out of this 1 piece of chicken, and it's so versatile. What we're paying for, you can buy thigh meat all by itself, you can buy the legs, you can buy it all broken down. It will cost you more money. I like working with this. It does not take long to do. And all of the other things that you can make with it are that much easier. Be mindful when you're working with the raw chicken in your workspace though. Make sure everything's nice and cleaned. So with that chicken, you know, the thigh meat cooks great if you lightly sear it and you can braise it and pour some liquid over it and cook it for a couple hours, and it'll take its time. You can cut it into strips and it goes great in stir fries. Whatever's gonna work for you.